You grab that big tub from the freezer, ready for a sweet treat after a long day. You think it's rich, creamy ice cream, the real deal you've always known. But what if the label is hiding a big secret? Most of those big brands you love, the ones in your fridge right now, they can't legally call themselves ice cream at all. You're buying something totally different. Go look at a tub of Breyers, Edy's, or Turkey Hill next time you're at the store. You'll see those exact words printed right there. Companies do this to cut costs. They often use less cream and whip and way more air to puff up the volume, which makes the product lighter and cheaper to produce. That's why premium brands like Ben & Jerry's or Haagen-Dazs feel so much denser. There's less air and more of the good stuff. Today, we're going to show you exactly how to spot the difference on any label. And then we'll give you 3 fantastic real dairy brands so you always know you're getting the real deal. All right, let's break down the rulebook. You might think the government has better things to do than police the freezer aisle. But when it comes to ice cream, they're surprisingly strict. It's a legally protected name, and to use it, companies have to pass 2 major tests. We already know about the first one, the 10% milk fat rule. But there's another requirement most people have no idea about. It's all about weight. According to federal law, a gallon of real ice cream has to weigh at least 4.5 pounds. It has to be dense, it has to be substantial. If it's too light, it fails the test. And what makes it light? Air. The industry has a technical name for the amount of air they whip into the mix. It's called overrun. And the FDA has a hard limit on this too. Real ice cream can have a maximum of 100% overrun. That means for every gallon of liquid ice cream base, the cream, sugar, and flavor, they can whip in enough air to make, at most, 2 gallons of finished product. In other words, a tub of real ice cream can be up to half air, but legally, no more. But what happens when a company wants to cut costs even further? They push past that limit. They whip in more and more air, puffing up the volume until the product is way over that 100% mark. The dessert gets lighter, fluffier, and a whole lot cheaper to make. The moment they do that, they've crossed a legal line. The product no longer weighs 4.5 pounds per gallon, and because it fails the test, it's immediately disqualified. They can't call it ice cream anymore. That's the exact point it becomes a frozen dairy dessert. This is why a tub from a premium brand like Haagen-Dazs feels like a solid brick in your hands. It has very low overrun, very little air, so it's dense and heavy. A tub of Breyers, on the other hand, often feels noticeably lighter. That's because you're holding a product with a lot more air and a lot less of the actual ingredients. So the next time you're at the store, don't just read the label. Pick up the tub. You can literally feel the difference between the real deal and the imposter. All right, so when you're standing in that freezer aisle, which tubs are we actually talking about? You'd be surprised. We're talking about some of the biggest, most familiar names in the freezer. Brands like Friendly's, Turkey Hill, and Edy's, which is also called Dryers, depending on what part of the country you're in. But the biggest and most famous example is Breyers. For generations, Breyers was the gold standard for simple, real ice cream. Many of us grew up with it. But if you've bought a tub recently, you might have noticed something's different. It tastes fluffier, lighter, less creamy. That's not your imagination. Go look at one of their classic tubs, like their natural vanilla. You'll see the big Breyers logo you've known for years. But look closer. Read the fine print right underneath. You won't find the words ice cream anywhere on the front. Instead, you'll see 2 very different words: frozen dairy dessert. That isn't a marketing slogan. It's a legal confession. The company is required by law to print that on the label. It's their way of telling you this product no longer meets the legal standard for real ice cream. And Breyers is far from the only one doing this. Walk down the aisle and you'll see it everywhere. Friendly's has tubs clearly marked frozen dairy dessert. So does Turkey Hill. So does Edy's. These companies made a business decision. They changed their recipes, replacing expensive ingredients like cream with cheaper fillers and whipping in a lot more air. The result is a product that's less dense, less rich, and a lot more profitable to sell. But in the process, they crossed that legal line we talked about. They forfeited the right to call their product ice cream. So now they have to call it what it is: a frozen dessert. It's a quiet change, printed in small letters, and most people never even notice. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. you start to realize just how many of the tubs in your grocery store aren't what you think they are. So it can feel a little hopeless standing in that freezer aisle. If so many of the big household names have switched to frozen dessert, what are you supposed to buy? Well, the good news is there are still fantastic brands out there making the real deal. They follow the government's rules and they don't try to trick you with fine print. It all comes down to two things: fat and air. Real ice cream, by law, has to be made with at least 10% milk fat. That's the cream that gives it that rich, satisfying flavor. But the second rule is the one that really separates the good from the bad: air. The official term is overrun, which is just a fancy way of saying how much air is whipped into the base during churning. Once a product's volume is more than doubled with air, it legally can't be called ice cream anymore. That's why those tubs of frozen dairy dessert feel so light and fluffy. They're literally half air. The best brands, however, do the exact opposite. They keep the air way, way down, which is why a pint of the good stuff feels so much heavier and tastes so much creamier. So, let's name some names. Here are 3 widely available brands you can always trust to be real ice cream. First up, a brand you'll find in pretty much every grocery store: Häagen-Dazs. Häagen-Dazs built its entire reputation on using simple, high-quality ingredients. If you pick up one of their classic flavors like their vanilla, look at the ingredients list. You'll see just a handful of things you can actually pronounce: cream, milk, sugar, eggs, and vanilla. That's it. There's no corn syrup, no artificial thickeners, no cheap fillers. They don't need them. They stick to the classic recipe that easily meets the standard for real ice cream. It's dense, it's rich, and it proudly says ice cream right on the front. Next up, another powerhouse, Ben & Jerry's. They're famous for their wild flavors and all the cookie dough and brownie chunks they cram into every pint. But underneath all that fun stuff is a seriously high-quality base. Remember that rule about air? A premium brand like Ben & Jerry's has what's called a very low overrun, often under 50%. In simple terms, that means in every single spoonful, you're getting more cream and flavor and a lot less air. Bluebell. While it might not be in every store nationwide, Bluebell is a legend for a reason. For over 100 years, they've stuck to their guns, making traditional, real ice cream. They focus on that classic, smooth, super creamy texture that people fell in love with generations ago. When you open a tub of Bluebell, you know you're getting a product that hasn't cut corners. It's a perfect example of a company that still takes the words ice cream seriously. So whether it's the pure simplicity of Häagen-Dazs, the dense richness of Ben & Jerry's, or the classic creaminess of Bluebell, you always have great options. You just have to know what to look for. So the next time you're craving that sweet treat, you won't be grabbing that big tub blindly anymore.